Hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of A Modern Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Tosha Anderson, your host, and today we're going to be talking about advocacy. And I'm really excited to have this conversation because occasionally I like to have founders of nonprofits on this podcast to talk about the real struggle it is to not only start a nonprofit, but to grow and scale a nonprofit. And today we're talking about advocacy and through the lens of how to get your foot in the door, how to persist, how to make the mission that you're trying to do really resonate with the general public, both on maybe a bigger scale and on a smaller scale. And since I've never started a nonprofit, it doesn't make sense for me to lead that conversation. So I brought along my new friend, Courtney Johnson. Courtney, you are the founder of Culinary Care, and you started this nonprofit way back when you were 23 years old. I love a young, ambitious founder of a nonprofit. And you have not only started this in the Chicago area, but you've now expanded it into other regions. So I'm really excited to hear about how what you've experienced along this journey. And um, yeah, so I don't want to give it away. I don't want to steal your thunder. So Courtney, thank you for joining me and taking some time out of your very busy schedule. Why don't we just kick right off and tell us a little bit about your work, what culinary care is, because I think that's going to tee the conversation up for people to understand maybe why advocacy was so important for your organization and why it was so challenging to get into some of the doors you needed to have the impact you wanted.
Yeah, definitely. So, Culinary Care's mission is really just to nourish cancer recoveries. It's a lot of, hospitality, it's a lot of comfort care. And so, for us, nourishment is literally like the two sides of our name. On the culinary side, we work with local restaurants, and everything is delivered, made to order, and delivered directly to cancer patients, their caregivers that are undergoing chemotherapy. So, if you're
Mhm.
in outpatient care, at the hospital, you do not get meal services from most cancer centers. It is you're
Mhm.
coming from home, you're not spending the night. And so a lot of people picture that tray of food with like, the jello and all of that type of
Yeah.
stuff. You do not get that when you are outpatient. That is an inpatient service. And so we serve right now, on our culinary side, it's really for families that are going in for like anywhere from like a 4 to 12 hour long day of
Yeah.
appointments, chemo, and just making sure that they have something they can look forward to and a good lunch that sort of gets them through the day. Oftentimes we find that it is the meal that they actually can eat, enjoy, and then once, the chemo kicks in, it's kind of a rough, next week and a half to 2 weeks. So it's often like the biggest sort of heartiest meal that a lot of our families are eating throughout their treatment journey. And then on the care side is once you're in our program, you're receiving meals. Like we are here to check in and be a lifeline, a neighbor, just someone that's constantly calling and just seeing how you're doing, seeing if you need another meal schedule. We're really here to like hold your hand through getting meals ordered. We know it's not top of mind. That's why we
Yeah.
exist. But then we try to make sure we go above and beyond that. So if we know a birthday is coming up, we'll make sure there's like a special treat or a card. We've now started doing chemo care kits with our corporate partners. So just goodie bags to get you through, whether it's activities, blankets, whatever they want to
Mhm.
include. So it's really just all of the things that we hear from our families that, they think they could use help with, and really just kind of being an extension of their community. And for some, it's
Mhm.
not an extension, like we are their community. So that's what we've been doing since 2013. We delivered our first meal. And
Wow.
I was 23 years old at the time. And so it's been a journey.
I would imagine so. You said something earlier I want to go back to where I think there's just some misconceptions on what people get when they are receiving chemo. Like you said, sometimes you might be there 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. I would imagine you have multiple appointments a week. This could be a very time consuming or just a multiple trip, right? Experience where people may not necessarily feel like they can bring food, something as simple as food, or the cost or the accessibility to leave that particular, treatment center to go get food, or just the cost to be able to order in food. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. So when you think about advocacy, what did that start to mean for you and your organization when you were trying to grow your organization and trying to debunk some of these misconceptions and advocating for the benefit of the patients that are going through this work and maybe what the public was assuming or not assuming they were experiencing.
Yeah, I feel like when I started culinary care, I actually didn't really know that the problem existed. For
Mhm.
me, it was really my dad passed away from lung cancer and when
Mhm.
I was in high school, and we had friends and neighbors that stepped in and brought us meals. And so I was really looking to figure out how I could be of service and deliver meals and really volunteer and heal. And then as I started doing that research, found that, okay, there's nothing that exists. And
Mm.
then then I feel like the advocacy started slowly kicking in, which was, okay, well, what are families doing if they don't have access to this? Maybe everybody has community support. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I'm going to sort of learn about the challenges and just do it one person and sort of one step at a time and just see if this is going to be a helpful service for others. Like maybe it's just the
Mhm.
opportunity to have one good meal. And the first meal we ever delivered was to a woman named Lee, and she had just moved to Chicago. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. She didn't know anyone, and
Mm.
she saw a flyer of ours at Gilda's Club. And so she's looking for community and she's looking for resources that can help her. And she just, said that the idea of having this restaurant prepared meal would be so incredible and that she was like salivating at the thought of it. But she wrote a 4-page letter that sort of went into like educating me on what this is like. And so for her, it was not only it wasn't food insecurity in sort of the sense that we think about it. For her, it was really like every time I go to buy groceries, everything is for parties. Like it's for a party of two, a party of four. Like I'm cooking for like a group. And she felt like that just made her feel more and more isolated and reminded her that she was alone and that she was cooking for one.
Mm.
And then it opened my eyes to the fact that she had been having surgeries and like through her treatment, she was getting reconstructive surgery and like had a stroke in the middle of all this. So there was like so many other health issues that she was going through. And she expressed that even reaching for her pots and pans or cleaning like physically hurt.
Ah,
And so that opened my eyes to that. And then at the very end of the letter, she, just wrote that our goodness, grace, and kindness restored her faith in humanity. And so it was like all of these different, like the physical nourishment, she wasn't eating
hmm.
properly because she was isolated and feeling isolated and that, cooking or making a meal for herself. She just wanted to feel taken care of. And
Mm.
so I feel like that first, I mean, our first patient, and we were just like, oh my gosh, if this is what we can do for one person, let's just
Right.
keep going and see if we can help others. But that really opened my eyes to a lot of like the issues that I didn't really see. Like we had the
Hmm.
community support as, for my family. And so for me, I feel like culinary care is just like almost a constant discovery of like what are the very like real challenges that someone is going through, whether that's financial toxicity and like 42%, I believe is the statistic of families will deplete their life savings and potentially go into bankruptcy by 2 years after their cancer
Mm.
diagnosis. So like
Hmm.
finance is really, really difficult. And
Right.
meals, like getting a meal is hard with that over your head. Getting a meal that you can actually enjoy and look
Right.
forward to. And that was someone who my dad was he was just like, he lived his life looking forward to his next meal. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was just like the idea that someone can't sit down and like enjoy food or that like you're not waking up like looking forward to that sandwich you're going to eat or something like that just
Hmm.
wasn't something that I felt was right. And so that was really what that letter just kind of opened my eyes to so many different challenges and issues. And I'm like, all right, if we can help solve this, like we'll do it. But it really started as like one person. It wasn't like I'm
Sure.
going to go create this huge organization. It was like I'll help you. Oh, good. You need help. Like I will help you. And then through helping and having just open conversations with our patients and with the community, it just sort of started to snowball into something like, okay, this is really, really needed. So
Yeah, it's any good nonprofit story, right? It's funny. I talk with people that end up in the nonprofit space. Not a single person ever has said, I have always grown up wanting to do this, right? We find ourselves in this space because we come across a need, and then the need is so much more significant than perhaps we even realized, and just that gets validated day in and day out. And as you were growing your organization from the very first person that you had this impact, no doubt, I'm assuming you met some resistance or roadblocks or misconceptions. What are some of those tangible ways that you were able to engage in advocacy in the beginning or even as you were trying to grow your organization?
I mean, I think honestly, a lot of it is just kind of like a little bit of just ignoring the naysayers. Like, I mean, there were plenty
Mm.
of people. I was 23, like, even our lawyers, like the first people we sat down would be like, here's the business plan. Their first instinct was to say, like, are you sure you want to start an organization? Obviously,
Mm.
they're coming at it from like a legal standpoint, but also just from like a we've seen, a lot of people come to us, a lot of people try to start
Yeah.
nonprofits, a lot of people don't succeed. Are you sure that you want to start this? Are you sure this is the path? Like, this is hard work. Like, this isn't going to be easy. Like, this is actually a
Hmm.
business with like a tax sort of code. So
Right. Right. Yeah.
I think that was, for me, I've just always been someone that like those no's just kind of fuel the fire. And so I remember leaving that room and my now husband was just kind of like, unfortunately for them, like them telling you sort of like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, let's find another path just makes you want to do it more. So I feel like you do kind of have to have a little bit of that, of that attitude or like, just kind of not that I was born with that, but it was just like that was just something where like I was willing to accept the challenge and see what I could
Hmm.
do. But yeah, and then there were plenty of people that just, I mean, it was just kind of I kind of just felt like whether it was my age or whether it was like I was starting a nonprofit, there I just kind of felt like there was always this little like, oh, cute little Courtney, here's just like a pat
Yeah.
on your head, like that's so nice. And what I really tried to do is find those people that weren't doing that and
Mm.
focus on them and just kind of ignore the rest and let those folks. And I think that's where like donors have so much more meaning than I think they even feel they do, where it's like for especially for like a startup nonprofit, like
Yeah.
every donation is like a vote. It was like you saying you believe in this and you believe in me and you believe in this mission. And like I'm not alone over here thinking that this is going to be this great solution. And so it was just that was kind of where I tried to focus my energy was really just trying to find those few people that were true sort of believers. They got it, they were in it to help.
Yeah.
And you also get so much advice. And I think,
Yeah.
the very early days, and even just like I have no fundraising background. I was
Right.
23, so I graduated college like, 2 years beforehand. So I didn't really have like a career experience. Um, and I'm not a chef. So everyone's kind of asking me like, "Oh, are you a chef? Like you make meals?" And I'm like, "Nope, restaurants handle that." And they're like, "Oh, are you from a logistics background?" I'm like, "Nope, just figuring that out." Like
Yeah.
basically everything was me just figuring it out along the way. But, someone said one of the social workers that we had met with at the hospital is like very, very early on, she came up to me and said, if you don't keep doing this, nobody else will. And I think
Yeah.
that's the reality of it is like no one created this before. I don't think anyone's going to create it after if they didn't do it already. And so it just kind of gave me that like, the sense of, okay, if I have um that sense of like why me, like why do I have a seat at this table, like what am I doing here, and
Yeah.
everybody that I'm working with is older than me.
Sure.
um, and so it was just for me those were sort of the more tangible things that help was just finding those people that did believe and just focusing really my attention on them as much. I mean, not that I was just like, oh, I'm so good at just ignoring all the people that don't believe in me and are telling me
Hmm.
that that I shouldn't do this or can't do this. It is personal and you do take it personally, but over the years, I've just learned to accept that, okay, it's just not for everybody. Like
Right.
my job in advocacy is to find my people and like our
Hmm.
people as an organization. So who are that is like what I feel believe is like my sole sort of mission with as like sort of running an advocacy, like everything we do is advocacy. Like I have to
Hmm.
find the people that are going to believe that this need is worth meeting, and not everyone's going to believe it.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and also just the knowledge and experience that you gain, just like, there was donors that I had conversations with. I remember one of the first donors that I sort of sat down with and got like negative feedback from, or it wasn't negative, it was just I was young, I didn't have like the full confidence to like sort of rebut her in any way, but she was just like, "Well, I only help organizations that work with like life and death situations." And at the time I was just kind of like, "Okay, yeah, like that I don't know if we're a good fit then." And that was just
Yeah.
kind of the end of the discussion, but now I've learned so much that you just
Mm.
kind of get stronger in how to be the best advocate both for yourself and for our families is just through doing the work and sort of ignoring the folks that are trying to put you down.
You're talking a lot about finding your people. I'm curious, especially for those that might be listening that are in the middle of starting a nonprofit, or maybe they have, but they've really struggled to launch in the way that they want to. Can you talk a little bit more about how you have found your people? Quite literally, like how do you spend the time or what kind of um, if you had to think about maybe in the beginning when you were really starting to get this going, like what kind of activities were you doing to meet people? Where were you meeting these people? Maybe how much time were you investing in the relationship building part of it? Because I think so often founders start wanting to do like the act of service, like whatever service that they're trying to commit to,
Yeah.
and I would imagine, although again, I've never done it, although I've talked to many, many people, that they spend a lot of their energy doing the service because they haven't built a team yet, and the program team needs to do that. And then they share the impact of that service, or maybe they try to, build the brand and a little bit of marketing around that. But I find that nonprofit founders find themselves really frustrated because they don't know where to like find their people.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever really seen an organization that's like, why are you starting this again? Like every organization I've ever seen, I think I could see where there's a place for that.
Yeah.
It may not be relevant to all people, but there's certainly enough need out there where this person felt like it would make a big impact. And so the frustration really lies in where to find that community, where to find whether it's the donors or the volunteers or the people. So I'm curious, in your experience, could you point to any like concrete things that maybe, or even any advice that people that are listening that are struggling to find that community, where would they go?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. One is like from our program standpoint. And so, yes, like 100%, we just wanted to kind of like get out there and start doing the thing. And for me, and it depends on the type of person you are. Like for me, that was something that I felt like I really needed to be able to go and ask people for money. I'm like, I
Yeah.
didn't have like the confidence and just the sort of skill set to be like, this is sort of a non-existent product, and I'm just hoping that you invest into helping me create it. That was just a different conversation that I feel like maybe now I could do, but at that time I'm like, I don't know. I need to make sure that I know what I'm doing, that I have a sense of like the need in any way. So we really, for 2.5 years, I was working full time. So
Mhm.
it was just me taking my lunch break, my family and friends delivering meals when a patient would request it. And so that was really how we got going. And then as we started delivering more and more meals, and even just having like one meal delivery under our belt. And for us,
Mhm.
we just tried to build that program, like the initial program. Like there's much more significant cost now that it takes to deliver a meal, because we're at just such a larger capacity. But at the time, it was like we just did the evaluation of, okay, we need a car, we're going to need gas, the restaurants are going to donate the meals. And so really this is like a very efficient, like low cost lift. And we're just going to do that for as long as we can, and just make it where it's like people were really kind of paying their own gas money and like helping, provide meals, and restaurants had been donating the meals. And so that's really why we needed our 501(c)(3) first, was because we wanted restaurants to donate the
Mhm.
food. I was working full time, so I couldn't prep it. We also felt like for food safety, it would be better to have like professional groups
Sure, makes
doing
sense.
this in professional kitchens.
Yeah.
And so from a program standpoint, that definitely was like where my heart was. And, I always sort of, up until just even recently, like for several years, I just like kind of would not call myself a fundraiser. And I just like refused to believe that that was going to be,
Yeah.
sort of my role and job. But the programs were really where like my heart was. And then as you
Sure.
see, like as you're talking to patients and as you're, delivering meals. And so for me, it was really, I would say like from a program standpoint, start with just like one person. And if you feel like you have to take on like, if you're trying to build a building, like a lot, we looked at that. Like we looked at how much does it cost to build a kitchen? Like how much
Mhm.
is there a simpler way we can do it just to get started and sort of prove out our model, which I think is very similar to what I read about in the for-profit world,
Yeah,
which you start with like what they call like their MVP, like your minimum viable product or whatever. And
absolutely.
it's like, okay, just start with that, show that you can do something. And then from a donor standpoint, in terms of finding our people in that way, it was also similar to the for-profit. Like we did our friends and family round, and we
Mhm.
did that for as long as we felt like we could. And then it was just like, okay, we really can't like keep going back. Like this is not like the need is greater than our friends and family can fund. And so now we need to
Right.
find opportunities to reach out to sort of like the wider community. For us, what that really, and friends and family did a really awesome job. Like it wasn't just, hey, can you make a donation? We were asking people if they could host a party at their house, and like
Yeah.
we'll bring appetizers, we'll bring drinks. Like we really just want to introduce our mission. It doesn't even have to be a fundraiser necessarily. It's really
Hmm.
just an awareness builder. And then you do those. And I remember at like our very, very first event that someone hosted, and that was just a neighbor who knew my dad. Like use your sort of any relationship that you have,
Hmm.
and just ask them if they can help get the ball rolling. And for me, there, one person stood up and said, you know, my husband was diagnosed with cancer and also passed away. And like I saw firsthand
Hmm.
how, you know, nourishment and, you know, lack of food, like even for someone that's perceived as like wealthy, she was like, we weren't eating properly.
Hmm.
And, you know, she's continued to be a donor to this day. So it's, you know, 10 years, 12 years in. So that is kind of the very, very, very early days of it. As we started doing like bigger fundraising, it really is, I would just say, like, take a look at your skill set and like what you feel like you can and want to be doing, frankly. So for me, my, you know, background was in PR, and sort of and some like events a little bit. And so we were like, okay, we'll host an event, but we need it to be different. We can't have it be a gala because nobody knows about us.
Hmm.
And we just sort of did this visual. Like if you're an executive at a company or you're a donor and we're sending you a gala invite and we're picturing them like they're lining it up on their desk. Like I don't know if that's how they do it, but we just pictured like they're sitting there with their, you know, team and they're just like, okay, great, what galas do we want to go to? And we're like, I don't think we're gonna break through the mold on that one.
Yeah.
And so our first ever like foray into fundraising is, you know, this year it's celebrating its 10th anniversary as our corporate cook-off. So we just said, you know, we decided to go through the corporate channel, really because it was people are at companies.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like people are there, and you know, it felt like we didn't have either direct emails were kind of on the websites and things like that. It just felt like we could take that path, and because I have a background in PR, I was very good and am good at just reaching out and saying hi and telling
Mm.
a story, and like that was my whole job was just, you know, I'm totally fine getting on the phone, following up. So I would say just like use your skill sets. For us, it was centered on cooking because we're a food organization.
Sure.
You know, if you run a different type of organization, then it would maybe, I would say, make it like aligned with the mission. You know,
Hmm.
a lot of people have golf tournaments and that's been talked about, you know, to us, you know, and we have those kind of conversations. But at the end of the day, we're like, we just don't really see that connecting with our mission and how that story
Yeah.
really gets told. So unless it was like a donor doing it totally independent because they love golf, it's not
Right.
something that like we're going to take on. So I would say from like a tactical standpoint, it's just where are your skill sets and where are your passions and where is the mission alignment and how can you really sort of advocate for like why this event makes sense. So it really does sort
Sure.
of go back to that advocacy, which is just how does the story align? Like you're inviting me to this. For us, it was a unique team building experience. So we were trying to separate ourselves from the gala, and we had been hearing feedback about, you know, folks just having a hard time sending their employees to like go sit at a table.
Right.
And, you know, we were just like, all right, we can't do that, because we just don't have the brand, you know, the brand power for it. So.
Sure. Sure. I'm curious too. So we talked a bit about like the programming side, volunteers, that sort of thing, but also the fundraising side, getting donors to the table. To me, a pretty big obvious, point of advocacy would be how do you get into hospital groups or, how do you convince these treatment centers to allow your team in? And I think you have a pretty interesting story during the pandemic on how your program was able to continue in spite of the fact that, I mean, we all heard horror stories of, couldn't even visit loved ones in, hospitals or treatment centers or things like that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you were initially able to get in your foot in the door with getting into these treatment centers, and then how you were able to sustain that when it seemed like the rest of the world was shut out of having access to that.
Yeah, I feel like I was watching, I forget what it was called. It was a movie recently. It was about improv, like
Mm.
comics that you know, are being recruited to, I guess, like be like secret agents essentially. But
Hmm.
one of the things that I think about with that is, I guess in improv, there's this thing called yes and. And I feel
Mm.
like that has really been our approach is like we just say yes and then we kind of figure it out.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Has been a little bit of our model. Now it's certainly at the very early days. And so with hospitals, really what that started with was patients were requesting that we deliver our meals to their cancer center because they're like, I
Hmm.
don't have food while I'm here. I could really use the help. And so we just sort of said yes and then figured it out how we were going to get there. And
Hmm.
we just, really, we walked in, we started talking to nurses, and just saying, like, we're here to deliver this meal to this patient. And then nurses started jumping in saying, wait, who are you here for? Like, this is incredible. And they see the need. I mean, there is no hospital that we've ever talked to at this point. We don't really, we have conversations with them from the get-go of like, hey, we'd like to launch here, and this
Right.
is how it works. Like we have our bearings, and we know how the program works, and we know all the logistics that they need to be on board with for it. But in the very early days, it was really just saying yes, and then, knowing that we have the confidence to figure out how we're going to get this to the patient. And we were very transparent with them, like we haven't done this before, so like we might not be able to find you. But
Hmm.
we were determined to figure it out, and it ended up working well. And so that has really been like our signature program since we launched it. But from a hospital conversation standpoint, I mean, some of it like coming into a new community, some of it really is just getting your boots on the ground. Like if
Mm.
email isn't working, you know where the staff is for a hospital. Like you can go in, talk to nurses, and we just really wanted to talk to the people that were the ones handling more of like the patient coordination. So nurses, social workers, dietitians, like they see it very clearly every single day how patients are coming in, they don't have food. And so getting them as our advocates and, kind of being able to say, this is an important program. And that is really what happened through COVID
Hmm.
was when all the hospitals were shutting down and restaurants were shutting down, basically everyone and everything that we work with was
Hmm.
shutting down. And so we had this moment of like, oh my gosh, there's a world where the hospitals could say no. And now our
Hmm.
programs are just like inoperable. And how do we tell that to our donors and continue to raise money if we don't have a program that we can operate today?
Sure.
So that was our first sort of email was like right when everything started happening. We had the relationships with the hospitals already, and so we were able to email them, give them a call, and really just align on like what we're all trying to achieve, which is to nourish our patients and advocating for our patients. Like this is going to be harder than it was before. Like we all saw the need pre-COVID. Now they can't go to restaurants. Your cafeterias are closed. Like all of those sort of things that might have been accessible to someone before are now not. They don't have a guest coming with them. They're
Yeah.
totally alone. And so we all just agreed like this is going to be now more than ever a very necessary and essential program for us to figure out how to keep going. And so I think even from the hospital standpoint, it was all new territory for everyone. And I think even for them, it was like, yes, and this is how we'll try to move this forward. And for us, it was we landed on the nurses would actually come down and get all of the cart from our team. So our team was
Mm.
really like going there, dropping off the meals to the nurses. Everything is already like bag tagged, like they knew what meal is going to each person.
Mm.
And that's just part of our like protocol and how we deliver meals. So it was really just like instead of getting that one face to face with our patients, nurses were coming down and getting those meals. Restaurants, however, was a totally different conversation. For them,
Mm.
it was you're closing your doors, like you are struggling to stay open.
Yeah.
Uh, you have been supporting culinary care for at that time probably 7 years. So we
Right.
just said, we're going to turn to our community, we're going to fundraise, and we're just going to put sort of all of that into like a meal fund, is what we called it. And instead of telling the restaurants, hey, we're going to be placing orders, like don't worry about our discounts, don't worry about, our donations. We just said we're just going to order it just on our own. Like we're not going to have this
Hmm.
big conversation with them because we know they're in the hospitality world.
Yeah.
Everything, every bone in their body is going to want to say, don't worry about it, we'll help you.
Right.
And we're like, we don't even want them to think that they have to come back to us with that. So we just started placing catering orders from all of our
Mm,
different partners that had been with us. And if there was local shops that were staying open that we could help support and uplift in any way, we just turned that meal fund into something that was just like playing a small role in how we can help the
help
community.
support them too. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was just, but yeah, it was definitely a, a very like there could have been a very different world. And I don't
Yeah.
know what that would have looked like if the hospitals hadn't just said like, oh, this is needed. And yeah, like we have to continue to serve our patients. And I think that's when the advocacy aligns, then I feel like that is like the best advocacy. Like if you're advocating to someone that's just like, they're gonna say no, or like you really feel like you're pulling their teeth on it, it's like if the alignment's not there and they
Mm,
don't share a mission with you, then it's really challenging. And you're just, in my perception, like you're just advocating to the wrong person. Uh,
hmm.
and then you just need to find like who you genuinely believe. Like I get excited about everybody that I'm talking to. Like I have
Yeah.
conviction about everyone that I'm speaking to. Very rarely am I going into a conversation just being like, gosh, I really hope that I'm gonna like turn them into a new person that believes in our cause. It's like there's some reason that I'm reaching out to you specifically. And sometimes it's just, I saw you're an alumni. Like
Right.
I don't know if you have cancer. I don't know if anyone in your life has had cancer. That's not like something people put on their LinkedIn profiles.
Right.
So it's really just finding like what is that small nugget of alignment that you can find so you can advocate for like why they might be interested in
Hmm.
supporting your cause.
I love that. This story's been so fun and inspirational to hear, and especially around finding your community and having those conversations. And I love that part where you said, I just have this conviction or, this drive to talk to every single person or, the people that you are reaching out to. You have an intention, you have a purpose, you have a good faith and belief that, hey, maybe this is something that could be relevant to them. And I think going in with that positive intention and like you said, making sure that the people you're reaching out to likely have some sort of alignment with what you're after and figuring out if not, then why not? Are you off base here? Or maybe, like you said, you just have to find the right people. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, Courtney, as we kind of wrap things up, I have two questions for you. The first one is more of, those young people out there, or just, I don't even want to say necessarily young because of age, maybe young in their journey of starting a nonprofit, but they want to lead with some sort of purpose, not sure where they should begin. What advice would you give to aspiring founders of nonprofits?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first question just ask yourself is truly like, you know, what are you starting it for? And I think that is something like when our lawyers had asked that, my
Mhm.
instinct was to be kind of like offended by it, but I don't think that was that was not their intention. It was really to genuinely say like you're not just starting a nonprofit, you are starting a
Yeah.
business. So if
Yeah.
you don't know that like your business is going to take a lot more, like you are not just going to be doing programs,
Yeah.
which I think is like a lot of the perception. Like actually, as the founder, your role is most likely going to be to build the programs and then move on to like all the
Yep.
other, unsexy parts of the business.
Yes. Yes.
And so I think like
Yep.
knowing that is kind of the first step, and making sure that that's something you're on board with, that you're willing to learn. Like I think, making sure you've got sort of the grit to take on and learn, because you're going to be the first learner. Like for
Hmm.
me and for I think a lot of organizations, for startups, like the founder is usually the one that's going to learn it and then pass the torch and learn it and pass the torch. Even if you're hiring people smarter than you, you still need to know how to like kind of double check them, like, and
Yeah.
have a meaningful conversation of like, well, why are you taking that path? And if you haven't done any of that work first, it's hard to have those meaningful conversations and move the needle forward. So that would be kind of my first question for you, would be just, are you ready to run a business, not a nonprofit?
Yep.
And then, two is, are there like where is the alignment? Like do you have like are you doing the friends and family? Like do a little bit of a business plan. I always call them like rough business plans. Like we did not
Hmm.
have a 40-page, 50-page. Like I think our first sort of business document was like 10 pages long. That's like
Yeah.
just have like an outline. I think we even just said like our fundraising these were going to be our initial goals. This was going to be a sense of what we would need it for.
Yeah.
This is how we were going to do it. And just figuring out. For us, we knew we were probably going to do events because, that was just part of our experience and background. And, there's other nonprofits that I've talked to that I've worked with that run a bookstore. And like that's
Yeah.
part of that's their revenue model is like people bring in donated books, we sell them, and then, that's so kind of figuring out how you're going to raise the funds and how that aligns with your mission. Because I
Mhm.
really think that having deep alignment and connection for your fundraising is going to just be the most sustainable in the future.
Yeah.
Like, don't just start arbitrary fundraising just because you need funding. It's like, make it tell a story, make sure it connects with your mission. If that means hands-on work or, inviting donors to a different facility to get started,
Hmm.
whatever you need to do to just open their eyes to the problem. Um, but yeah, I think those would kind of be my two first very like initial steps is I remember sitting down and just being like, what am I doing? How am I doing it?
Yeah.
And how is it going to get funded? Uh,
Yes.
and yeah, had I know, like, I mean, I don't think anyone said you're going to be running like a full, I think they tried to tell me and I was just like, okay,
It'll be fine.
great. And now it's like, oh yeah, no, you really are going to have to learn a lot and have a propensity to be excited about learning.
So much of what you said, I would say, is certainly not unique to just the nonprofit world. I think it's an entrepreneurial spirit in general, right? You probably know that already. And I loved your comment about you're the first one to learn. And I think that is the biggest surprise for people that go in with an intention of doing, like I said, an act of service, or they're selling like a widget, or there's all kinds of like personal development, leadership, business type books out there that suggest like say you're a great tradesperson, right? You have a trade and you decide to start a business as a result of that, and completely underestimating the fact that very soon, if your business is successful, you're going to likely, that might be the first thing you hand off because that's the thing you already know that you can teach someone else to do. And then as a founder or a leader of a business, an entrepreneur, you then have to go figure out something else that you have no business or no no
Yeah.
experience doing.
Really.
You have to somehow learn that yourself, and then you then pass that off. And it's amazing. That completely resonates with me because that has certainly been my experience in the 9.5 years I've owned this firm, that I definitely know accounting forward and backward. And the things that I learn now that I'm like, never, ever in the world of evers did I think I would be having to figure this out and then teach somebody else. I have no business doing this myself, much less teaching somebody else to do it. Now I have to oversee it. What is happening? So I think that's really validating for a lot of us that have been founders of our own businesses. So thank you for that. I love that. The first
And you might
learners,
not like it. I would say most
you
of the
don't.
things are like you will not wake up and potentially find joy from doing a lot of the things that you have to do as a founder. But like that is your role as a founder is like I'm going to
Hmm.
push through more than anybody else at this company. And
Yeah.
like when I'm doing things that like might not, fuel my fire, it's just like this has to be done. I'm going
Yep.
to do it. And it's like it's so easy to just say like, oh, we're going to hire and hire and hire, but like as a nonprofit, even honestly, nonprofit or for profit, like you really should evaluate that first. Don't just hire like a whole team of people
Yeah.
just you don't want to do that task.
Yep. Yep. Unfortunately, I have found the thing that I enjoy the most is usually the thing I'm the best at. I think that's human nature. And then that's
Yeah,
often the thing that you end up having to give away first because that's maybe
yeah.
the easier thing for you to give away. And then, yet by default, then you're left with like all the other things you don't want to do, which, side tangent, but that's, I have a 10-year-old. She's like, I don't want to do it. I'm like, all day long, I do things I don't want to do. So, so that is the spirit of an entrepreneur, I guess.
Yeah,
Courtney,
no.
this has been such a fun conversation, really inspiring, and thank you for giving your perspective. I love having nonprofit founders on to share kind of their stories and give us all a little bit of a recharge and remind us why we're all doing this work. If people want to follow along with your story or get in contact with you for any way to support your cause or to hear more about your journey as a founder, what is the best way for people to find out about culinary care or even you personally? How do we connect?
Yeah, I think the best place to connect with me personally would be on my LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I try to post there. And if there's anything you're curious about, I usually try to, open the conversation. And I definitely am working to be as transparent as I can about just like what it is starting a nonprofit and just like opening.
Hmm.
I mean, honestly, it is nonprofit, for profit. I believe startups are startups, so
Yes.
it's all
Yes.
the same. Our stakeholders are just different, and
Yep.
our stakeholders are mainly our patients. So
Yeah,
that's who we're serving. But
exactly.
otherwise, logistically, it's all the same. So that's on LinkedIn, best place to connect with me personally. And then from an organization standpoint, if this is something that, you're working to heal or grieve or have lost someone to cancer, or you're just like, I love food and I want to share that passion with somebody else.
Hmm.
The best place to get started is really through our monthly giving community. Go to culinarycare.org/the line. Even
Hmm.
$10 a month right now can help us buy, a meal every single month for someone. And then, we have a whole community that helps us get it delivered and provide all the care and all those things. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you again, Courtney. This has been great. For all of you that are listening and you found this really informative or helpful in any way, you know what I do every single time. Engage with it in some way, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate, whatever it might be. Until next time, thank you all for joining. See ya.